Welcome to the Nashville Wellness Collective podcast, where we unite Eastern and Western health and wellness practices and philosophies. Because the most important thing is that you achieve your health and wellness goals by carving out your own unique path to get there. No two paths are alike. And at the Nashville Wellness Collective, we've got you covered from east to west. On today's podcast, we have flotation therapy expert and owner of Float Nashville, Rachel Benton.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being with us
Very
today.
excited.
Likewise.
Yes.
So I just gave a really brief introduction of who you are, what you do, but if you don't mind kind of diving in a little bit deeper, if you want to introduce yourself, maybe anything I missed, and where people can find you.
Well, I kind of can be multifaceted. So you can find Float Nashville on Instagram, Facebook, all the things, just at Float Nashville. And on top of flotation therapy, I'm just really passionate about the nervous system in general. So kind of two of my lanes in the nervous system world is teaching and coaching human design, and then also flotation therapy. So me as a coach, you can find me at the Rachel Benton on Instagram or my website.
So you're the owner of Float Nashville here in the Berry Hill area. What is flotation therapy? What's float tanks? Can you please dive in, tell us a little more about it?
It's so funny because we were just coming off the Float conference, which is a big conference, and we all get together around the world, and it's all of these float center owners or float enthusiasts.
Mm-hmm.
And I was reminded this year, like, oh my gosh, a lot of people don't even know
Mm-hmm.
what flotation therapy is, or you hear about it as sensory deprivation, or you've seen it in the movies, or you've seen it in clips, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it can be this like aloof, woohoo, crazy thing when it's portrayed in media. And so people have a really unclear idea of what it really is. And so that was just a month ago. And so it's fun that we're having this conversation because it's like, oh yeah, we need to take people all the way into the basics.
Mm-hmm.
Because even though flotation therapy has been around since the 1960s, and it was developed in a neuroscience lab, like it wasn't some hippy dippy thing, like it was literally created to study the brain. And that's how they found out, like, oh, if we add the Epsom salt solution, and like the very first float tank, they were submerged with like scuba diver masks on.
No way.
Yeah, there's a book. John C. Lilly is who created and developed, but he's a neuroscientist kind of behind it all. And so you can see like these pictures and these books of like people submerged. And then they found out like, oh, if we so in the float tanks, it's 10 inches of water and it's 1,000 pounds of Epsom salt. And so then they learned, okay, if we add specific gravity, increase the specific gravity with salt, we can now float effortlessly. We don't need a scuba mask because we don't have to go underwater to float.
Okay.
In scuba things. We can float on top of the water. We can control the environment of the room. So we control the temperature. We control the water temperature. We control the lights. We control it all. And here's the thing is it's called sensory deprivation, but really it's sensory enhancement. Because we're taking away and controlling the external senses. So then you can go internal. So your brain then turns inward. Wow. So you're turning the volume up on the internal sensations, which is so life-changing.
Oh my God.
Because what happens, we know in the world of neuroscience, like when neurons fire together, they wire together. So your brain starts building these neural pathways that stay even when you're not in the tank. So now I'm like, ooh, I think I'm getting sick before I ever have a sneeze or a runny nose. Like I can feel my body shifting.
Oh, wow.
Does that make sense? Because I'm so in tuned internally. Sometimes I joke and like feel like it's a curse because I can't just numb out, right? I'm so in tune, but like, oh, something's off.
Yeah.
Okay, now I need the zinc. I'm going to up my supplements. I need to go to the sauna.
I think that's a blessing.
Right. And I like rarely can get sick because your body speaks to you way before it yells at you and screams at you. Ooh, right?
Girl.
And so Rachel, my manager, and I were just talking yesterday about how it's like it really is sensory enhancement. Not even though we're depriving the senses. So for those of you that have never heard about flotation therapy, or maybe you've just heard the scary like sci-fi version of it. Yeah. It's a modality that, again, you're in only 10 inches of water, 1,000 pounds of Epsom salt. This is making your body float effortlessly.
Yeah.
So that's getting the gravity off of the body.
Yeah.
So when we get the gravity off of the body, yes, there's all these internal benefits, but you get a really great spinal decompression because there's no gravity, right?
That makes sense.
It's really great for blood pressure and cardiovascular things because you're taking the blood's not having to travel through gravity, right? So the blood pressure can go down because it's not having to force itself, and then blood volume can increase.
Wow.
Okay.
That makes sense.
Yeah, really cool. So that gravity piece, same thing with the lymphatic system. You're getting really good lymphatic detox because there's no pressure of gravity on the lymph system.
Things just flow better.
And then plus, you're in 1,000 pounds of Epsom salt, which is filled with magnesium, which is an amazing detox in itself, right? And then the magnesium that's making you float is a really great detox for the body, but it's helping restore your magnesium levels.
Nice.
You know, so you're absorbing that through your skin. So that's really, really helpful. So that's the gravity piece of it. The water skin temperature. So you're not getting in like a super hot tub, but it's about 94.1 to 95 degrees. So that can be weird at first. Like I remember the first time I floated, no one told me that. So I get in, I'm like, oh my God, disgusting. Like this isn't hot. Cause I used to take hot baths. I mean, I still take really hot baths when I take a bath. So my brain wanted hot, steaming hot water.
Okay.
But if you understand the point of floating, you don't want extremely hot water because the goal is for the brain to stop processing touch.
Okay.
So if the water is the same temperature as the skin,
that makes sense.
Then the brain eventually thinks that the water is the skin. The skin is the water. And what's super cool about this is your fingers don't even prune. So you can be in the tank 3 hours. I mean, we have 90-minute sessions, but you could do 2 sessions. You could be in like 3 hours and get out and your fingers aren't even pruned because your brain never told your body it was in water.
What?
Isn't that cool?
Pruning is because of the brains? And
well, it's like a protection for the skin.
Okay.
Do you know what I mean? It's a response.
Yeah. But it's
a brain signal.
Triggered by the brain.
By the sensory, the sensory center, the brain.
Whoa. That's crazy.
Yeah, so that's a really cool fact.
Yeah.
And so then the room itself is dark. You have control of your light if you choose. The goal is to turn the light out because then you're the brain's not processing anything visually.
Okay.
And then for your sound, you have your natural rhythms. You can hear your breath. You can hear your heartbeat. You can turn in. So it becomes really womb-like experience. Okay. It's not scary. It's not, the movies depict this really like sci-fi extreme experience. And the reason why they're pulling that is it's entertainment in a movie. But what's really happening scientifically in the brain is when our brain is not receiving external information and it's not having to process and filter so much, it can turn inward, but it's also restructuring how the brain is processing information. And so once you're in the tank, and I'm going to say it kind of old school just because it's easy to understand, but like left brain logic starts to quiet down. So for those of us that are really analytical and are always thinking, it's really helpful because it quiets that part. Some people might even call that ego, right? Quiets the ego mind. Yeah. Quiets logic mind. And then it increases right brain creativity. So you're unique because you almost have a balance of both analytical and creativity. Yeah. But I feel like if we talk about Western culture, we tend to get really conditioned to be very left brain logic. And you're almost shamed away from your creativity. So much so that 3 years ago, I bought Float Nashville 3 years ago and have been in this industry for 3 years. I probably would have told you 3 years ago that I'm not creative.
Okay.
But I'm very creative.
Yeah.
And now floating has shown me, right? It's tapped me. And now, am I creative with the paintbrush? I mean, I can have fun with the paintbrush, but I'm not selling my art, right? Yeah. But like, I am uber creative in business.
Yeah.
Really creative when it comes to money. Heck really creative when it comes to like, even the fact that I tied human design and nervous system and floating.
Wow.
Yes. And can braid it all together. That's really creative.
Yeah.
Because my brain confused different things. And like, oh, this is how we're doing that. You know, that's creative. And so what the float tank does, it starts to build again, those neural pathways to right brain. Because we're usually hyper wired in the left brain because we're conditioned that way, not because we were born that way. Right. So you get this like quieting of the ego, quieting of left logic, enhancement of right brain, which is really creative. And then you get your nervous system. And this is where the magic really happens in healing in the body, because most of us in our conditioned Western world, we're super fast paced. We're always on to the next. And even though we're functioning and we think we're high level functioning, most of us are in chronic fight or flight. So the nervous system is dysregulated and it's in that fight or flight.
Okay.
But we don't realize it because we've been operating there for so long that feels like home.
Is that parasympathetic, asympathetic?
Yes.
That's okay.
Yes. And so I usually just say like fight or flight or rest and restore because it helps people understand what you're talking about. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So the fight or flight is kind of what we get stuck in.
Yeah.
But we can operate there because we're so used to operating there that it feels like home until we start getting chronic health issues. Most health issues stem from the nervous system because that vagus nerve runs from the base of the brain and hits every major organ in the body. And so when it's saying, hey, slow down, the person's in survival, then your messages from the brain to the body slow. And the messages from the body to the brain slow because that nerve is slowed down. And then eventually that nerve loses its toning. Where in the float tank, the body automatically feels so safe because remember, there's nothing externally to process.
Yeah.
So without you doing anything, it moves from fight or flight into rest and restore. Okay. So once it gets into rest and restore, all of a sudden you're getting the signals going back and forth.
Wow.
But just like muscles, like if you quit working out, you're going to lose muscle. Muscle tone. Well, this nerve gets toned. So the more we're floating, the more we're toning the nerve.
Oh, wow.
And I don't want to say just floating. The more we're grounding, breath work, floating, walking, being in nature. The more we're doing things to regulate the nervous system, we're toning the vagus nerve. Because in life, it's normal and common you want to go into fight or flight when you need to. But what you're doing in the tank is you're starting to develop this awareness and you feel yourself shift in fight or flight. And do I need to allow myself to be there? Is this healthy? Okay, yeah, I'm so glad that I can run right now. I'm so glad that I have adrenaline pumping in my body. I really need it right now. Or like, no, this is just a scary email or the number in my banking account. Being in fight or flight's not going to fix it. I'm going to do some breath work. I'm going to go ground. Okay. I'm going to get up and take a walk. You see what I'm saying? You start to see, or you start to actually feel.
Yeah.
And you can move yourself back because now that nerve is toned.
Okay.
It's fixable.
Yeah.
Right? And I think in we talk about Western modality, Western medicine, they just want to give you medicine to fix a symptom. They don't want to even talk about the nervous system or the vagus nerve and heal the root problem, right? I think there's just a gap in solution to knowledge, you know, coming at people. But modalities like floating help people start to fix that. So the brain is then like left logic's relax, hyper creative, nervous system is in rest and restore. And a couple things happen when you're in the float tank. Either you go into a really amazing nap and it's like just a really good sleep because you've been so dysregulated. That's what your body needs.
Okay.
Or it can be a really insightful float. And it can be like, I get tons of business inspiration in the float tank. I get visions of like where we're going to move. And this is where the movie woohoo stuff comes in, right? Because you're just in this dream. It's like a dream.
Nice.
But you're in theta brainwave and you're in reality. So it's just so much more potent than waking up from a dream and remembering it. It
like
just
right before you fall asleep, that theta state.
That's what you're in.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so you can even revisit trauma. So it's really good for PTSD because when you're in this altered state, when the trauma comes up, ego, logic, mind doesn't shut it down and we don't go into fight or flight. So when we're open and the nervous system is regulated when the trauma comes up, you can fully relive it to release it. And what happens mostly in traumatic situations is the brain shuts you down. So it keeps storing the stored memory. You see what I'm saying? So like some people listening might be familiar with EMDR or the eye rapid movement therapy. And that's getting you into theta, right? A lot of therapists will do that. Very, very similar with floating, except you're not being guided by a practitioner.
Is that
right? It's coming up for you.
Can that be scary? I mean, because do people come out if you're crying, like they've released something?
When people come out of the tank, it's like such a beautiful experience. And I say it all the time, like to be the person holding the space is such a gift because you see the person walk in, even if they're like not anything's wrong, right? You just see them walk in and then when they get out of the float tank, literally they've lost thousands of pounds of energetic weight.
Yeah.
And you can see it in their eyes. You can see it in their posture. You can see it. Now, some people do come out and want to process, but it's different. It's not like, I'm sad. I'm having an anxiety attack. You know what I mean? It's not necessarily that at all. It's just like, yes, there can be tears, but it's like, oh my God, you're never going to believe what just happened.
But good tears, right? Like
definitely releasing a lot of releasing.
Yeah.
And I've had some things like, even the fact that we're doing this podcast, like, you know, I had, in the float tank, I think a lot of my work in the world is being seen and being heard. And I had a lot of blocks. So there was a lot of energetic blocks and I couldn't figure it out. And one time I was in the float tank and it took me to my bedroom when I was a child and I was playing in the closet. And I was like, oh, I love to play. Like, that sounds horrific, but I love to play in my closet. Like, it was big enough. There was like a Barbie house in there. And my home was very unpredictable. There could be outbursts and it would feel unsafe to a child, right? And so I knew that I was just always safe in my closet. I was out of people's way. It was, in my childhood, it was better to be not seen and not heard. So my subconscious created a programming of it's not safe to be seen and it's not safe to be heard. But for me to do my work in the world now as an adult, I need to be seen and I need to be heard. And so in this float tank, it took me into that closet. And then, you know, I would say audibly I heard and I felt, because it's different when you're on that plane. It's like, it's not like a voice talking to me. It's a knowing. There was a knowing in my spirit that told me the whole story. Right? Of like, here you are in your childhood. See, it wasn't safe to be seen and heard. And then I've done a lot of work at the float conference. So it took me onto the stage of float conference. I was on the big stage and this really happened in real life. And oh my God, the float community is amazing. And it was like, see how safe you were. Like it was safe to be seen and heard. And like, see how this doesn't fit you anymore.
It doesn't serve you anymore.
It doesn't serve you anymore. And see, I would have never been able to connect all of that. I don't think outside of the float tank. And I'm not saying talk therapy is not good, but like my therapist wouldn't have known I was in the closet. Right. And I wouldn't have brought that up because it didn't feel traumatic because I loved my closet.
Wow.
You know what I mean? Like I wasn't like I was thrown and locked in a closet. I loved my closet.
It's almost like being in the float tank maybe opens up the opportunity for your soul, your higher self or spirit or whatever you want to call it, gives it the opportunity to give you or relay information to you that you need, that in the waking world you don't even realize you need. That's beautiful.
And I would say, like, so for anybody that's practiced yoga, you might have this layer of experience with yoga. Like in your very first yoga class, you're so overwhelmed and you're just like, you're so in your head trying to figure out the poses. And like, you're so obsessive, like, oh my God, I'm totally doing this wrong. I can't believe I'm doing this wrong. I can't, why did I even come? Then at the end of it, you're like, oh my God, this was awesome. I'm coming back. Then you go to your next yoga class and then you figure out like, no one here cares. So I'm just going to figure the poses out. Okay. And then like, let's say a month in, you have all the poses. And then you get to do breath work. Right. And it's like, okay, now I need to connect my breath with the move. Got the move. So I'm going to connect the breath with the move. Then you finally get that. And then you're like, okay, now that's where the fun comes, right? Because then you can hear the thoughts that are happening with the movement and the breath, right? And the unlocking of the soul, I think, really happens in yoga when you get there. Where like in the tank, what's really, really cool is it's not months and months of a process. You can have all of this shit happen in one float. Scientifically and like through all these trials, it's usually by the third tank or the third float that magic happens. Cause like the first float's like that first yoga class where it's like, oh my God, there's a door. What in the world? Like, do I crack the door? Do I leave it open? Oh, I don't know if I want earplugs in. I'm freaked out because I'm naked. Like there's all these things, right? It's all new the first time. And then you do it the first time and you're like, okay, I want the neck pillow. I'm definitely wearing earplugs. And I'm so comfortable naked. I'm so glad I don't have the itchy bathing suit on. It really, you know what I mean? You learn your things. So the second float, you're set up and you get into it faster, right? You get your brain releases faster because there's nothing holding you back because it's not new anymore. Then by the third one, you just go right in.
That makes sense.
And what I mean by that is that it's like and some people are more analytical and they don't want to say it's spiritual, right? They want to say that they got a lot of insight. They got a lot of creative downloads. They got a lot of whatever language you need to put around it.
Whatever works.
But it's really amazing. And I could give you so many other stories like that, but it's just like stuff comes up in the tank and it's almost like you're able to connect the dots to provide healing in a way that I don't know if I could have ever done outside the tank.
Wow. Yeah. That makes sense. So you mentioned a couple of things before getting into a tank, like what to wear, door open or close.
Yeah.
You mentioned that there was a lighting situation too, and then maybe an earplug situation. Did you want to explain maybe for our viewers, like what, just walk
Like what
them
the
through like the
process is?
processes of getting into the tank?
Yes. So at Float Nashville, and I feel like at most float centers that I've ever been into, we provide you everything that you would need. So you've got anything here that would be supportive, because when you're floating, I mentioned earplugs because when you're floating, the water comes past your ear.
Okay.
Okay. And so for some people, they don't care. Most people, though, you want to protect the ear, right? Because the solution is really silky and it's really soft because it's just water and 1,000 pounds of Epsom salt. But then as it dries, it's really crunchy because it's tons of salt.
Okay.
So that can be really uncomfortable inside the ear.
Sure.
Post float. But we have several people that like don't want to wear earplugs, and whatever, to each their own. But we provide you earplugs for needing earplugs.
Yeah.
But when you float, you come in, we show you your room to make sure you're really comfortable and you feel safe. We do recommend that you float nude, but you're in your own float suite. So you've got your own private room, door shuts, locks behind you. And we say that because of the exact reason I just said, the solution, it dries crunchy. So when you're floating, the top of you is out of the water. So then where the water is meeting the skin, if you've got a bathing suit or swimming trunks on, the salt can start to dry to that suit and become itchy. So then you're disrupting the sensory deprivation piece. You know what I mean? Or if your swimsuit has a tie and it's floating around, then you're going to get the spinal decompression and you're going to get the detox, all those things, but you're missing out on such a huge part of it. If you know what I mean? For the brain to be able to tap all the way out is like, and I said that wrong. The brain's not tapping out. The brain's just altering it a different way. So for you to be able to turn the volume up of your internal senses is really the sweet spot of floating. And if you have clothing on, it can really take away from that process. But if you're somebody that has, like, maybe you have trauma around being naked in a space, then by all means, please wear your bathing suit, right? It's not like we're making people do things. But, and then you've got earplugs, so you can put that in if you want. Those are waterproof. And we have petroleum jelly. So this is kind of getting the weeds of it, but it's high salt content. It can burn any open wounds. If you have like, I don't mean, you don't want to float open wounds, but if you had like a scratch or
even a paper cut,
anything that burns, that's what I just say. Hey, anything that burns, or a razor burn.
Oh,
you know what I mean?
I hadn't thought of that. Yeah.
So we give you petroleum jelly because it just is like a layer. It's almost like an underwater Band-Aid.
Okay.
And it's really safe for the tanks and all this stuff. So it's like underwater Band-Aid. So we've got that in there. We've got a makeup wipe. We've got all the towels, robe, slippers, everything that you need, shampoo, conditioner, all the things. And everyone showers before they get in their float.
Okay.
Just to wash off like your dry shampoo or your hair products or your lotion products, right? So you wash before you get in the tank. You get in a tank, you float. We have, up to 90-minute floats. So you can ask to get out whenever. I really recommend a 90-minute float because it gives you time to really, the mind to be really curious, to figure out the environment, and then you're settled into theta and you're at least getting 20 to 30 minutes in theta.
Nice.
Because it really sucks when you get in that sweet spot and then you got to get out.
Yeah.
But you can float. Some people come in for an hour. I wouldn't recommend anything less than an hour.
Okay.
Personally, to get into the theta part. If you're floating of an injury or physical body thing, any time in the tank's good.
Okay.
Right, to get the weight off your body. But for the full body, full mind, soul experience, I would give it an hour.
At least an hour.
At least an hour, yeah. And so then you're floating. The float's over when you hear music play. So the music comes through the tank and you can hear it. And then you get out and you have time to take another shower.
Okay.
Get dressed and come out. Something that I was thinking about that comes up a lot is for people, it's like, oh my God, do you drain the water every time? How do you clean the tanks? Yeah. How is it sanitary? How is it clean? So the tanks themselves, it's 10 inches of water. Okay. And it's 1,000 pounds of salt. So there's so much high salt content. Like think about a saltwater pool. There's not that much salt in there. I can guarantee you that.
Right.
But microbiome cannot live when there's that high of salt content.
I'd imagine.
Yeah. But then a step further is you've got pool pumps on the back of each tank. So after every person it's ran, and you're only talking about 10 inches of water.
Yeah.
So it's like you can filter the whole tank in like 5 minutes, 10 minutes, like not long at all.
Nice.
You know what I mean? Because so it flips on, all the water goes through the big pool pump.
Okay.
Then there's a smaller pump that's got a UV light on it.
Oh,
and so, and in between the turns, there's what's called hydrogen peroxide that's put in. And it's hospital grade hydrogen peroxide. And if there happens to be any bacteria in the water.
Yeah.
That interacts with that UV light to kill it.
Wow.
So then you got the extra layer and then it comes in. So it's filtered after every single person.
Wow.
And then if you think about evaporation and people getting in and out, we probably add a half an inch to an inch of water a day.
Mm-hmm.
So within like 10 days, it's all new water anyway.
Yeah.
Because
Okay.
of just how you're adding,
adding
all the
more.
time. You're always adding more water and more salt, like just consistently.
Yeah.
And then every week, everything's deep cleaned.
Okay.
Filters
Wow.
are changed. You know, we get inside the tanks and clean everything. And that can happen too in between, like more than once a week. But every week, we're closed to do like that deep cleaning.
Awesome. How does flotation therapy help with
Like,
athletes
so much.
recovery? And
yeah, it helps so much. I actually just floated yesterday because I had like my hip has been off and like burning where I couldn't even sit. Like I would not be able to sit this long. And so when you're in the float tank, lots of things are happening. Remember, you get that spinal decompression. Mm-hmm. So you get the anti-gravity. Literally, when I was in the float tank yesterday, towards the end, I was getting a really good sleep and I was kind of in and out, but then my neck like jerks, literally like it would at a chiropractor.
Oh, wow.
And I could feel like my body putting itself back in alignment. Whoa. It's really insane because but like, let's reverse this is my entire life. I've had chiropractic adjustments. I think my body knows where to go back to.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Does that make sense?
Muscle
like
memory.
it's like used to a chiropractic adjustment. And like, you know, when your pelvis is in alignment, you've got a little bit of a pelvic tilt. Mm-hmm. And so when I got in the float tank, I love to do body scans in the float tank. That's kind of how I start my floats because your body, again, you have such a heightened awareness of the body internally when there's no gravity on it.
Okay.
And so the body scans are really amazing, but I could tell in my mental body scan of my body when I got in yesterday, I didn't have a pelvic tilt.
Oh, wow.
By the end of the 90 minutes, my pelvic tilt was back.
Wow.
And then my hip hasn't bothered me. And then this morning I was doing my walk and now I know why my hip bothers me because I've been walking miles every day. But the road I'm walking on is off.
Shut up.
Swear to God. So then this morning, so then I'm walking like this. Well, guess what? Hip hurts. My left one. Because I'm walking like this. And so I'm like, well, I live in the country. So I'm walking in the middle of the road, like, you know, to keep this from happening.
Wow.
Isn't that crazy? So now I connected the dots because I could feel.
It.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's crazy.
Because in the tank, I can feel like, oh, it's this spot in my hip, like right freaking here. You know what I mean? But when you have all the gravity and everything pulling, you don't know if it's the front of your hip, the back of your hip. But when you're in the tank, all that comes off. So you know, like the micro spot. Yeah. So then this morning when I was walking, guess what my mind did? Yeah. It felt the micro spot. And then when I was on the pavement. Yeah. And then I adjusted. Whoa. So we'll see. I mean, I might need to float next week. We'll see. But like, yeah, so it can help with alignment.
Wow.
But then you're getting the increased blood flow that we talked about in the beginning. So remember, an injury needs blood flow.
Yeah.
So your injury is getting that increased blood flow. Wow. Your muscles are getting the magnesium, which helps with inflammation. Yeah. And then, I would say those are, and then like the lymphatic drainage, I would say the increased blood flow is huge.
That is huge.
The magnesium's huge and the anti-gravity is huge. So those are the three things that can help you increase performance. Like the Titans, in Nashville, they have tanks in their facility.
Oh, wow.
So lots of professional athletes use floating to aid in their performance. So you don't just float when you're injured. You can float to keep you going. Like I did the 5K and I'm like, oh, I got to go float.
Oh,
because I want to float. I know. Can you believe it?
That's awesome.
And so like I floated after that because then it doesn't feel like I did a 5K. Right. It's like, okay, well, I can do another one. It's like, you don't have that deep recovery time. It speeds up your recovery time so you can keep going. Right.
Really good.
In a healthy way.
Yeah.
You get to keep going in a healthy way. You're not pushing past your boundary.
Right.
You're replenishing.
So your body can handle it. Wow. That's incredible too for people that are just starting their health and wellness journey or fitness journey to know that, okay, I don't have to necessarily push myself to the point where I feel sore the next day. I can recover my body and keep recovery maintenance going.
Right.
So that I can see my fitness goals achieved maybe in a shorter amount of time, as opposed to being that person that's always out or injured or this, that, and the other hurts.
Well, and I really believe too, because you're increasing your introspection. So like your internal sensory is heightened. You're less likely to be prone to injury. Like today I knew why, because I could feel it in my walk. If I was disassociated from my body, I would have never felt that. Because it was like a tiny feeling. That's so great. That I was aware of. You see what I mean? So like you're less likely to be prone to injury.
Yeah.
Because your brain is so aware of the communication to the body. Like you're tapped in, you're tuned in.
Yeah. That's so crazy. Yeah. I don't know if I'm going to include what I'm about to say on the actual final cut, but I used to smoke weed.
Yeah, I still take gummies. Okay. We sell them right there. You want one?
We pop a gummy before our podcast.
Yeah, you can pop a gummy before the float. I mean, but it takes you on a whole journey.
I was going to say, this reminds me of the way because I've done float, but I just did it one time. So I don't feel like I got the full experience that you're explaining, especially
by the third time. It takes it can take three
and beyond.
Yeah.
And the way you're describing the third and beyond seems like when I was high, and like moments when I was high, I would feel very in tune with my body and notice every little thing.
It's
like
euphoric.
You're mentioning like every little movement, and I could feel like if there was a vertebrae out of alignment, I'd be like, I just need to pop that.
And I literally being in the float tank is a natural high.
That's how
like you're high.
Explain it.
And you're in theta. You're literally in a different brainwave.
That's incredible.
Yeah. And I mean, maybe this can segue into the mind and the brain, because it's a number one modality for anxiety and depression and PTSD. So you have anxiety and depression, and it's clinically proven to heal body dysmorphia. Because when we have, like, I have had a history. I'm very careful to say what I am, right? I have had a history where I had body dysmorphia. Okay. And my body dysmorphia, like, you know, when I was in high school and middle school, you know, I suffered from eating disorders and like just crazy shit, right? Mm-hmm. And my body dysmorphia, I think, started to heal once I had children. I think it was very reinitiated when I was first pregnant, because as women, when your body's uncontrollably changing, it can trigger all of those things back up because it makes you panic. Okay. But once my body built the baby, birthed the baby, and then it took it going back. Yeah. And luckily back then I didn't have floating, but I had my yoga practice. Okay. You know what I mean? I had some practices that kept me grounded and mentally healthy. But I healed a lot of my body dysmorphia through the process of becoming a mother and just shifting my shame into honor. Yeah. Like, wow, look what my body did look what my body did. Heck yeah. You know, this is amazing. But it's a brain awareness thing. So there's a whole graph, like at the Float conference, they do all these studies and there's neurosciences that come in. And the way the brain works is when women or men have body dysmorphia, I don't want to say it's a dysfunction, but it's an altering in the brain of the way they actually see themselves is distorted. Mm-hmm. So when you're in the float tank, you're practically just doing a reset on the nervous, like on the sensory center. So you're healing that I don't want to call it dysfunction, but you're altering
its wiring or firing.
Yes. Okay. Yes. Yeah. So then that person can see themselves for how they really are. Wow. Plus their internal sensory centers are like their interoception so turned up, right? Mm-hmm. That now there's that connection with external senses and internal senses. Wow. And it has healed, can heal and will heal body dysmorphia, eating disorders. And then the whole chemical release. So we talk about you're high when you come to the float tank in a really positive way off of all of these endorphins. Yeah. That are all natural. And you're in a really healthy brainwave. And remember, the neurons that fire together wire together. Yes. It's really great for anxiety and depression. Because again, all of the things that are, all the neurons that are firing in the tank are starting to wire together. Yeah. So then you have this whole amazing balanced brain. My right brain and my left brain are firing at this like equally. So then I have a whole brain to go out and operate in the world. So I'm less likely to be as triggered.
That's
you know what I mean?
Incredible. And then you're mentioning just how this is so therapeutic. It also makes me think that somebody that is suffering from anxiety and depression, it might be really cool to hear some feedback if they were to come to you for float therapy, but also in conjunction with a talking therapist. Like, can you imagine the two powers combined?
And we have some therapists that will use us that way. because what happens is,
incredible.
you know, some therapists will do the EMDR, eye rapid movement therapy.
Right.
Then they'll do the talk therapy because
Yeah.
the whole point is I need this person in theta brainwave.
Yeah.
Because, and all that means is I need ego mind. I need left logic mind to take a back seat so we can do the real work. So we can have the healing, so we can feel things. Yeah, that's really, really powerful. And another powerful way for someone to do that without a therapist. Therapists are good, but like, let's say they didn't have the resources to do that, or whatever. You can get a lot from journaling.
Okay.
You know, so when you get out of the tank, and we've got those journals that we've created, but just the subconscious can come through a lot through journaling. It's like when you're pen to paper, you're bypassing that conscious mind.
Wow.
And so literally, I didn't need a talk therapist to take me through that childhood moment, right? I was able to connect all the dots. I just needed to see all of the dots.
Yeah.
You know, and so through journaling, you can start to get all of your dots out.
Yeah.
So then you can see them. And awareness is really, really huge. And again, I am not saying you should not have a talk therapist. My sister's a therapist. Like, therapists are amazing.
Yeah.
It's just, there's a lot you can do with floating.
Yeah.
Let's say because you can't get to your therapist.
Yeah.
But therapists have and do use this. And it's also really cool in combination with like physical therapy and or massage.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because you're relaxing everything before you get that massage.
That makes
So
sense.
it's more impactful, or you're relaxing everything before you're in physical therapy.
Yeah.
So it's easier to stretch or get that.
Yeah. And then in physical therapy too, to also be so hyper aware of all of those little muscles, especially with physical therapists, since they're working out like the nuances, you know, maybe like a wrist muscles you didn't even know were there, but then all of a sudden you're like, I am aware. Thank you. I'm aware of all of them.
I can feel it all.
I
can feel it all. And that's something too, is like, you can have a lot of fun in the tank. So I don't like people to take it too serious, because you can get in there and you can like push back and forth. You can like play with your body. You can stretch, because it feels so cool. Because the water's really silky. You feel really sexy. I don't care if you're 500 pounds. You've never felt sexy a day in your life. Like, you feel sexy because the body feels like so new and so different. You know, it's like, you remember being a kid? Maybe you didn't do this, but I definitely did. And you stand in front of the mirror and you do all the funny things at yourself, and you're just like checking yourself out and like, you know what I mean?
The talking tummy.
Yeah, you do all the things. It's like in the float tank, you have the space, the curiosity, and it feels really fun to do. And so maybe that can let us in before we end, like the phases of float, because people need to expect, like, you can go in and like, boom, get in and go right into my session, and oh my gosh, the music's played and it's been 90 minutes. I had no idea. But another type of float you can have is like several micro floats within a big float.
Ooh, okay.
So it feels almost like you're like going in and then coming out, maybe playing a little bit, doing breath work, and then boom, you're back in.
Okay.
And then you come out, and then you'll know, like, intuitively, like, okay, I'm ready to get out. Yeah. Maybe before the music plays or whatever. Or you can pay attention to see, like, do I really need to get out, or is my ego trying to get me out? Because my brain's job is to keep me alive and to keep me going. And my brain's hyper conditioned to always go, 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 go. So am I really done? Yeah. Or could I just hold and practice holding, and then what's going to happen? Yeah. Okay. And staying curious. So it's all about like curiosity. Yeah. No expectation, no judgment. Don't try to stop your thoughts. Because remember, yes, you can go to sleep and have no thought, but you could be in really heightened right brain. So it's very dreamy, which is really, there's tons of thought in theta. It's a very dreamy, creative. So don't shame yourself. Okay. That was another question. From thinking. And I learned that from holding space for people. How was your float? It was so good. I just couldn't with thinking. And it's like, no. That's okay. Like, I was thinking when I uncovered my childhood trauma. Okay. You see what I'm saying? Like, it's okay to think. So a different way to shift it is becoming curious about why you're having thoughts. Okay. And usually the curiosity opens the playground for the universe or spirit or whatever to come in and dance with you. Nice. Right? Or if it's like, that's weird. I have a lot of pain in my right hip and I didn't feel that before. I wonder what that is. Okay. Boom. It takes you somewhere. Oh, I had a cramp. I'm not on my period. I'm not ovulating. Why do I have a cramp? Yeah. Boom. Wow. So like getting curious. That's a really good way of explaining it. It's a way to like break out of the because that was another question I had, is like, are you supposed to have thoughts? But so thank you. That answers that. But you might not. Like yesterday when I floated, I went really in and out. Like I can tell you all these creative insights I had, but I also would tell you like, man, it was really restorative.
Okay.
I think I had several gaps. Like I felt like I was really thinking a lot in the beginning, and then I felt like there was a gap. Then my neck did that thing. So it brought me a little bit too. So then I think there was some more thinking, and then I went back out again. But the thinking was good, and I got so much from it. And I really needed to float. Like it had been a month for me.
Okay.
So I needed that.
How frequently do you recommend for somebody who's just in the maintenance plan? Now, for somebody who's just starting off, do you want them to do the 3 consecutive ones, like weekly, or those first 3 sessions? Or how do you recommend people, how often should people float?
I would say listen to your body.
Okay.
But if you're dealing with something chronic, so we have chronic pain. We have people that float with us that have rheumatoid arthritis. They have chronic anxiety, chronic depression, really bad migraines, terrible back pain, all these things, right? If it's anything chronic, the science shows like, yes, by 3 floats, the brain is primed and it's feeling really, really good. But if we're dealing with something chronic, they say the magic number to get to your like once a month maintenance is 8 sessions. Okay. And they did a study and it was like, it can be 8 sessions. And when they did this, it was like once a week for 8 weeks or it was every other week. And it didn't matter. Okay. And the study that they did had all the elements from headaches, back pain, anxiety, insomnia. I think it was a 4.
Every other week for...
So it would be every other week for 16 weeks.
For 16 weeks. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So, but 8 in total.
8 in total. It could be once a week or bi-weekly. Yes. Okay. And we have packages here to where it makes that very cost effective because your membership's $59. Okay. Then any additional float on that's $59. You know, and then once you get your 8 in, and you might be somebody that gets 4 in, and you're like, oh my God, I feel amazing. And you'll be so in tuned internally that you'll start to know before your pain's at a 10 that I need to go back and float. Okay. You know, you'll start to feel it before you're at a 10.
Yeah. Earlier you mentioned, well, we were on the topic of brain and rewiring and firing and new wiring happening. And that led me to remember that float and flotation tanks is not your only offering here.
Oh, yes.
You want to tell the audience?
Yeah. So at Float Nashville, like we're primarily floating, right? That's what Float Nashville's been around for 11 years. It was the first float tank in Tennessee. The previous owners brought floating to Tennessee. It took them 3 years to get it approved through the health department. Like they did the hard work to get it birthed into our state. So it's been around for 3 years or 11 years. And it started out as only a float tank. Like that was all that, all that there was. Yeah. And then over time, I've had it for 3 years and I'm really passionate about nervous system, just period. So we've got the brain tap and revive chair. Okay. And that's really It's really fun. It's really working on the unconscious mind. So anybody that's played in this kind of thing, unconscious mind is kind of that programmed. It picks up a lot in childhood, but it operates like 80% of our day. Yeah. And so tapping into any type of modality that can help you become aware of these unaware programmings helps you redo them. So then you can operate in a way that feels better to you now. And so Brain Tap does that. And it's using a couple different things. It has the headset that goes on. It's got binary beats. It's where the beats are going right brain, right ear, left ear.
So you look kind of like a robot, like futuristic. It covers your eyes and then it's got the...
Yeah, and it's got the lights on there. And the whole point of the headset is like lighting up different parts of the brain, right? And then you can pick like music only, or you can pick a hypnosis track. And there's all these different types of series of things that you can go through. But it's basically hypnotizing. And that freaks people out too, but we're hypnotized right now. Like we could go, you should have a whole episode on hypnosis.
Oh my gosh.
I've got the girl for you. So if you choose a hypnosis, you can do Brain Tap without the hypnosis piece. And it's still really good because you can be like, okay, I want to go into theta. Well, in 7 minutes, it gets you into theta. Or you might be like, hey, my ADHD is off the chain. I cannot focus today. I need to get this deep work done. So you come in and do an alpha track and it gets you an alpha brainwave, which gives you energy, but it's this pure, clear energy. So your brain is clear. Yeah. You're ready to go. Wow. And you can do that on your lunch break. You can come in and do it before work. It's 25 minutes. You can even do like a 10-minute session, but because it gets you where you need to go in 7 minutes.
It's amazing, y'all. You have to come in and try this. I've tried it before and it was like another kind of high. I'm not going to say.
No, it's true. It's true. It takes you to the moon. Like that's what I said. But because also you've got the brain set, but then you're on a grounding mat. So your body's grounding.
I was on the Revive. Is that grounding?
Yeah, it's grounding. It's plugged into grounding.
So the Revive chair is like a big recliner chair and it vibrates.
Yes.
Yeah, it vibrates. So y'all, you have this music playing, the lights that are like syncing to the music, and then like the chair feels like it's like vibrating, like syncing to the music. And you're like, oh my God.
But the chair is hitting different chakra points.
Oh, wow.
So it's very strategically vibrating. Because the whole point is to make the brain, again, fire in certain areas and together. So areas that fire together, wire together. And as humans, we want a balanced brain. Yeah. We want to access right brain as much as we do left brain. We want to be able to access them together. We want to be able to say, oh my God, I'm emotionally dysregulated and freaking out, but I can make logic match it. So then I'm back whole. Yeah. And so that's another way to train the brain.
Wow.
And it's very opposite than floating because it's very sensory. It's a highly external sensory experience, right? Okay. So what we've seen after bringing that in, that's really great for people that are terrified of the float tank.
Okay.
Or feel like they're really mental. They can do the brain tap first. Okay. So they're already in theta and then move to the tank. And so they can surrender faster.
Nice.
Right? It kind of takes away that. Yeah. Had a really funny analogy, but we probably shouldn't say it. I don't know your audience.
Well, we've already gone through the high.
I was going to say it's like adding the vibrator with the sex. Okay. Yeah, you can like get the climax faster. No, but it's your choice. Your choice.
That makes sense. I mean, yeah.
So you can drop into theta really fast. And then my manager here, Rachel Johnson, is master Reiki. So she's a Reiki master.
Oh my gosh.
That's and super healing. She's healed me physically. Like she has a gift when it comes to Reiki. Like Reiki, like she's a yoga teacher and she does breath work and she just does amazing. But like when she puts her hands on you in a Reiki session, like it's very, very, very powerful. And she does those in that brain tap room. So you're on that Revive chair. And we've played around with it. I think it's best not to mix the modality. Okay. Like you're on the Revive chair and she might do something before or after. She's really intuitive. But like that's the room that people are in. And then I remotely teach human design. And human design is just a modality for people to gain awareness. So it gives their left brain logic. Yeah. That's usually hyper conditioned language. Yeah. To understand how their energy operates in their body. Okay. So then the mind can quiet. Okay. And they feel comfortable to drop into the body. Okay. Because again, the body is wisdom, right? Yeah. So everything we're doing here is teaching the mind the body's safe. Nice. So then we can tune into the body. I don't know. Life is just easier that way. You know?
I got chills.
Yeah. Good.
I don't know if you think we should throw it in the open tank that you have for people who might be claustrophobic.
Yeah. That's really good. So we have two styles of tank. There's an open tank and it feels like a really big bathtub. And it's a really great starter point. Okay. And a fun fact, like I owned Float Nashville and it was just floated in the open tank for a really long time.
Oh.
And I now will do either. And if I have a choice, I choose closed. Okay. And I would say 80% of the time in a closed tank, I still crack the door because I just have triggers. And so for me, if the air gets a little bit steamy or something, it's a trigger for me. Okay. And so if I'm already, like if I'm needing to float because I need to float, I don't want to trigger. Right. So I crack the door.
Okay. Yeah.
But if I'm floating like once a week, then like 50% of my floats are for fun at that point. And so then I'll shut the door. So I've really worked on the claustrophobia trigger through floating. Wow. You know what I mean? I don't have it come up in my day-to-day life because now I know. And then my brain's had practice of like playing with it, you know what I mean? And like showing my body that we're okay and we're still safe or whatever. I haven't like overcome it completely. I overcame so far, I think, a snake phobia. Wow. Which that's a whole other story that happened in the tank. But we don't have to go there if you don't want to. But so the open tank is for people who are claustrophobic. Okay. Or super pregnant. It's really great for pregnancy, by the way.
Okay. Let's let the audience know
really good for pregnancy because you're getting all that weight off.
Oh,
A lot of times for women, babies can turn. So if a woman's having an issue and the baby's not turning and not getting into position, because it relaxes her, you know what I mean? It can help open those hips to allow the baby the space to turn. And then you can go in either tank when you're pregnant. Probably the open tank just feels better because you have more space and it's easier to get in and out of.
Okay.
And we have the bars on everything, so it's easy for anybody to get in and out of anything. But we can give her noodles, like float noodles, so she can float in her belly.
Oh,
you know, like proper head, so it, like that feels really good. But a lot of women that I didn't get to float pregnant, I really wish I would have. But a lot of women's feedback that I've got when I've been here is they have loved being on the back because it's quote unquote dangerous to be on your back when you're really pregnant because of the weight of the baby hits that primary vein.
Okay.
So it can create blood clots and issues. But in the float tank, that's not the issue because you're anti-gravity.
Yeah.
And so you can lay on your back.
Nice.
So you can do things that you normally can't do. But you get the magnesium is really good for like fighting effects of preeclampsia. You know what I mean? You're helping the blood pressure.
Nice.
You're helping with inflammation. The lymphatic system gets to move. You can feel the baby. It's a really intimate time with the baby.
Yeah.
Because think about introspection. Like you're almost in a womb and the baby's in a womb.
Yeah.
And then you can really feel the baby. And again, I wish I'm never getting pregnant again, but if I ever did,
but now you can help all other pregnant women go through that experience. And like you said, I'm sure build a bond and feel closer to their child because they're having that moment of like, I'm in a womb and you're in a womb. It's like almost the Russian dolls that are like a doll within a doll.
Yeah. And like you're heightened aware
of
every little movement because there's no gravity.
That's so cool.
Right?
Yeah.
And then the brain's relaxed and able to turn inward. There's a whole episode in itself on like a mother being regulated while pregnant is so important because you pass things on to your baby. If we talk about Eastern philosophy, stress hormones and things like that. And like babies are picking up impressions
while they're in the womb.
Yeah. So the more a mother can stay regulated. So no shame if you're dysregulated and you're listening to this, your baby is fine. Your baby chose you and you're the perfect mother for it. It doesn't matter what a shit show you are, like the baby needs you and all your shit show. But if you have the option to have a tool that's going to keep you regulated, hormonally imbalanced, chemically imbalanced, cuts your anxiety, your depression, like it's so good for postpartum. Because as a postpartum mom, you're exhausted. Oh my God, you're exhausted. And 1 hour in the tank is equivalent to 4 hours of sleep, even if you didn't go to sleep.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wait, can you say that again for our audience?
So 1 hour in the float tank is equivalent to 4 hours of sleep because of the way your body can cellularly restore because it's not processing all the external mess.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
So for those like new moms, like literally, when I bought Float Nashville, I started floating when my daughter was like 1. Now they're, I don't know, 5 and 7.
Okay.
But like, you're still exhausted when your kids are little.
Yeah.
You know, and you're doing a bunch of stuff. And because, I mean, you're not just a mom these days, usually. You're doing all everything. The things. Everything. And so it's just a great way to get self-care. And I was just talking to a mom yesterday when I was in here and it's such a great experience because no one's touching you. No one's talking to you or at you. You're in your own space and your own energy. And it's equivalent to 4 hours of sleep.
Like what?
So like take me to a massage and all the things, but like sometimes that you don't want to be touched.
Yeah. Sometimes
don't
you just
touch
need
me.
some sleep.
Yeah. Don't touch me. Don't talk to me.
Yeah.
And so the float tank becomes a really amazing thing. It's really mixed modality. It's like, oh, well, I can get spinal alignment and a detox.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And all the things.
And therapy and all the things. And like
my soul therapizes me. Like I didn't even have to go anywhere. It's really amazing.
In one float session.
Yeah. So it's huge and it's huge for parents, not just the mom. Yeah. I recommend it for your first date night postpartum when you get released to do things like that because sometimes you don't have anything to talk about when you're a new parent because you're so exhausted and you're in survival mode. But the float gives you something really fun to talk about because it's something you do that's new, but it also regulates the nervous system. So then at dinner or later, you can be in a more chatty, open space.
Nice.
And you got like 4 hours of sleep before dinner. You know what I mean? So it's like, I wish I had this as an option for my first date postpartum.
Oh, but now you get to help all these people and with this knowledge and information.
Yeah.
Did you want to lead us out by telling us any special pricing, offer, promo codes?
So to learn more about floating and to experience floating if you're in Nashville, we're floatnashville.com. So our website's packed with information. There's videos of like what to expect at your first float. A lot of things we covered here, but you can find more about that. Some blog posts, things like that on the website. And then to get a discount on your first float, you can use promo code NWC20, which you'll put that in the show notes. I'm pretty sure.
I'll put it in the notes.
And that'll get you $20 off of your first float. And then like we've got an amazing membership. Like we price this to be a part of people's everyday and monthly budget. And we understand the economic pressure and all the things. So we really want to provide this to the community where people have access to the modality, access to a regulated nervous system. So the membership is $59 a month. We have a promo going on where your first month's only $29.50.
Wow.
Which is really crazy. So get that last. I'm just kidding. It's $29.50 for your first month. Then $59 after that. It gives you 1 90-minute float a month or up to 90. You're not stuck to 90 minutes, but you have that full option. It comes with like a float journal. It comes with the whole community. I'm really passionate about educating. And so like monthly pop-up things where we're educating you on floating or bringing people in the community in to educate on what they are really good at and what they know. So it just kind of gets you exclusive access to those kinds of things. And then tons of perks like the brain tap's only $10 with the membership.
It's amazing price.
Yeah. You can share it with a friend. Just visit the website. It's got all the things there for you, but really accessible.
Thank you so
You're
much.
welcome.
Thank you for being on the show. And I normally like to ask people on their way out that if somebody listening right now is on the cusp, like they are intrigued by float therapy and thinking, I think I want to try it, but I'm just not completely sure yet. Do you have a book or a resource of some kind where you can direct people to and say, hey, if you're not ready yet, go watch or go listen to this, that, or the other? Anything?
I don't have like a podcast specifically or a specific book. John C. Lilly wrote a book, who's the guy who came out with floating, but that could be big and kind of boring. Okay. Unless you really want to get into the science and the weeds of it. I mean, I liked it, but our website's really, really good. Our social media is really, really good. And you're always welcome to come into the space before you buy a thing. Nice. And so, you can always call ahead because we stack our schedule to where we have gaps in between clients. There's about 45 minutes and we do it because we really are building a community. So once you come out of your float, you can have tea and then you're connecting with your float, specialist, and it gives us time to turn the rooms and filter all the water. So there's a 45-minute gap in between every float to where you could come in and see a float tank without ever floating.
Okay.
And we're going to start doing a Try It Out Tuesday. So you can look on our social media for that, sign up for our newsletter. But the Try It Out Tuesday is going to give people the chance to try it out for $39.
Nice.
But it's a 30-minute float, but you're trying out the process before committing more financially. Okay. Or do the membership for $29.50.
Yeah.
Times 3 months. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Yes, absolutely.
And be sure to like, share, and follow. You won't want to miss the future episode where we have Rachel Benton back on the show to tell us all about human design. You definitely don't want to miss that episode because she will be giving us details on how you can go about getting a free human design chart. And if you want to be a guest on the show, just visit the Nashville Wellness Collective.com and click on the link where it says, if you want to be a guest, click here. Give us a follow on social media at the Nashville Wellness Collective. Thank you so much for listening or watching. This is Unique Cortez, your host, the Nashville Wellness Collective, where we cover all of your health and wellness needs from east to west.